So Damian Lillard just finished his 9th season with the Portland Trailblazers after losing to the Denver Nuggets without their starting point guard Jamal Murray. Now, I know he just signed an extension and he's supposed to be in Portland long term, but if you're Damian Lillard, are you really going to stay in Portland for the rest of your career, or do you think he should go?
I think he should go. I mean, we talk about this a lot when we talk about elite players that stay too long in their original destination when they were actually drafted. Damian Lillard could potentially become one of those players who we think could have possibly been very elite, could have possibly been very good on another team, possibly even the Celtics, possibly the Lakers, possibly the Denver Nuggets, just a whole bunch of teams. Where it turns out that he wanted to stay home and wanted to be loyal to the soil, and it turns out to actually bite him in the end. Earlier, he was saying no way, no how he was leaving the Portland Trailblazers, but now it seems like there's a little glimmer of hope. Now he's not necessarily 100% committing. I think he should give them this last year. Let them try to do something around him, man, because you look around the league right now, you got a bunch of teams making very big moves, and you got a bunch of teams making very big leaps. You had the Phoenix Suns 2 years ago was bottom of the barrels, couldn't necessarily do anything. Worst team in the league. Now they're in the NBA Finals. The Miami Heat a couple years ago didn't make the playoffs. Last year they were in the finals. Atlanta Hawks, you feel me? A couple years ago they weren't even in the playoffs. Now they're in the conference finals. Teams like that give Damian Lillard the idea, like, yo, this team isn't really doing much for me. Now they did fire Terry Stotts, which was something that they actually had to do. He was a very stagnant coach, not necessarily a bad coach, but a coach that wasn't necessarily making the right adjustments, wasn't necessarily a championship level coach. I think if they hire the right coach, which of course they hired, I think Chauncey Billups, I think if he definitely does a very good job, he could possibly stay. But again, if this year doesn't necessarily go out very well, I think he should definitely leave, and it's going to be very difficult, man, because they do have a rookie coach coming in and trying to, learn everything on the fly.
Man, you asked me, the time to leave was when they got swept by the Pelicans and Drew Holiday and Rondo and Anthony Davis. That was the time for him to leave. I mean, Dame is just eating these years of, wasted effort, just going out there and losing in the playoffs. And I know he's getting sick and tired of it. I mean, I really feel bad. It's like, we say he doesn't have help, but then he does have a guy like CJ who's, criminally underrated. Nurkic, who's okay, but he's usually hurt. But it's like a guy like Damian Lillard, he's not afforded the same assets as guys like LeBron James, who has Anthony Davis, or Kevin Durant, who has James Harden and Kyrie Irving. What's the quote that he always say, Rob? He don't run from the grind. Listen,
Yeah.
it sound good. It sound good when you say it out loud, but at a certain point, it's not about the grind anymore. It's about putting yourself in the best situation to succeed. And if your franchise won't do that for you, then it's time to go. With that being said, I think a team that should seriously keep an eye on Damian Lillard is the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, I know, Ben Simmons, his value is like fluctuating right now, being that we just seen probably one of the worst performances we've ever seen, and a guy that just is afraid to shoot the ball, literally. But I mean, if you pair a guy like Joel Embiid and Damian Lillard together, I mean, and in the East, I think you'll get a lot further and have a lot more success than you will if you stay in Portland. I mean, the West is, even when you think about it, as weak as it's been, injury has plagued the entire league. They played a team without their second best player. I mean, what is enough for Damian Lillard to realize is not going to happen in Portland?
Look, I agree with both of you. Damian Lillard needs to go, man. And like you said, his quote is, "I don't run from the grind," but he's gonna be grinding and grinding and grinding. He's gonna be 35 years old and not even touch the Western Conference Finals, let alone the actual finals. You have players like Devin Booker, who is a dog, but he's 24 already in his first finals. He might actually even win his finals. Where you got Damian Lillard, who's been a great player, a great point guard, one of the best in the league for how many years now, and his success in the playoffs is just not there. Can we really blame him for everything? I blame him for staying. That's the biggest blame that he's going to get.
Well, one of my biggest problems with the Portland Trailblazers, and not necessarily the Portland Trailblazers, a lot of people that kind of back the Portland Trailblazers and Dame, again, people like completely omit the fact that there is a whole other side of basketball than offense. You have to play defense. Damian Lillard says he doesn't necessarily run from the ground. I don't see him in a sand like Pat Bev. You feel me doing defensive slides? He needs to be better on the defensive end of the ball if he's going to actually quote unquote not run from the ground. I think even in these years playoffs, they was actually feel me. They was actually shielding him off of Facundo Campazzo, not necessarily wanting him to guard him, man, because he was basically torching him. Coming to the Sun series, we thought that he was going to be actually doing something because he was dicing up Dame in the actual series. So I think things like that is definitely a problem for Dame. But not only that, coaching wise, we're starting to see these defensive minded coaches come into the league and actually start doing something. Nate McMillan is a very good example. You have a very good offensive team, the Atlanta Hawks, Trae Young. You got a whole bunch of Bogdanovich, John Collins, so just a whole bunch of snipers and a whole bunch of scorers. But then you bring a defensive minded coach and it actually stabilizes things, makes everything come together. Not only that, of course, we have the New York Knicks. That team right there can't score for nothing, but they could definitely lock teams up. Tom Thibodeau knows what he's doing on the defensive end. Now, I don't necessarily know exactly what the situation is with Chauncey Billups. I know he's playing wise. He was definitely a very good defender. How is he going to bring that there? But I think if the Portland Trailblazers want to be good, they have to be good defensively because they can score with anybody. They just can't lock anybody up. That's the problem.
I can't blame Damian Lillard for not playing defense because as much praise as you give the Atlanta Hawks, Trae Young, even if he's trying to play defense, he's not going to guard anybody. He cannot guard anybody. He's really just there for a presence, even though that's very little. And yes, the Portland Trailblazers can score with the best of them, but about 80% of that is Damian Lillard. He gives so much on the offensive end. Defense is pretty much, we forgive Dame for not playing defense because he's out there giving you 30, 35 points per game just for his team to even stand a chance. I think what makes the Atlanta Hawks work, and this is the problem with the Portland Trailblazers, they don't have enough, wings willing to play defense. And when I say this, I mean you look at Cam Reddish, this very last series that the Hawks played, you saw him getting up in Middleton's face, not backing down from the challenge. Before DeAndre Hunter got hurt, he was the best wing defender that they had. And, of course, you got Capella in the paint, him playing defense. So, again, I mean, it's about what you put around Damian Lillard. And Portland can't seem to put the pieces around Damian Lillard. And they've been holding on to this chess piece, which is CJ McCollum, who you can probably get something for. And, I mean, listen, I'm a fan of Melo. You brought him in, that was great, but Melo does more harm than good. He can't guard the soul, and he slows the game down. It's just bad basketball when you think about it. So,
yeah, I completely get your point. But Dame, he speaks like he's one of them ones. He speaks like he's a Michael Jordan, like a LeBron James. When those two came into the league, they weren't known as elite lockdown defenders. But you know what they did? Understood that the rings wasn't coming, so they start to become very good defenders. Both of them multiple first-team all-defenses, decorated on the defensive end. Not only that, you had multiple other players, Kobe Bryant. I'm not necessarily saying that Damian Lillard should be compared to those, but the way he speaks and the amount of attention that he gathers from his talking, like I don't run from the ground, he needs to become that. Now I understand physical attributes plays a very big part in why he's not necessarily that, man, because he's about a 6'3" in size on a good day. But I think you look at a player like Pat Bev, he's 6'1", barely, and he's locking people down, even though he quote-unquote just runs around. He makes very good defensive plays. Dame doesn't do that. Dame, literally runs from ball handles and try to shield off on people that's spotting up in the corner. That's literally running from the ground right there.